Okay, by Hashem's loving kindness and goodness, today He's going to help us learn about equanimity. Nice fancy word. And we're going to learn about calmness of the soul, Mussar, a lesson in equanimity. Now that you've become quite familiar with Mussar and its spiritual curriculum, and who is the spiritual curriculum? We are the spiritual curriculum, right? I believe that we're all ready to take on to our soul trait this concept of equanimity. It's going to require me to define it very specifically because the way the Hebrew word presents it, it'd be easy to confuse it with other concepts. But I do believe that, and I'm choosing to put it up forward because sometimes Mussar teachers put this part in the back somewhere of the latter part of the 13 because it is a little bit more of a difficult concept to grasp and to obtain. Equanimity of the soul trait that governs whether you stay calm or lose your head. Equanimity is often confused with inner peace. Okay, so as I follow along, we're defining what equanimity is. It's often confused with inner peace. Many of us live a very stressful life in equanimity. It's possible to have a very stressful life and a difficult life and have calmness within. This is what we're talking about. However, equanimity is not tranquility. What do we think when someone is tranquil? Peaceful, calm, everything's good, nothing bad is happening. So we know it's not inner peace, and we know it's not tranquility. And it says, you know, for example, and you've heard me say this, when I left my last profession, it was not a very tranquil place. It was very stressful. And I've learned since then to avoid stressful situations. Equanimity is the ability to remain in stressful situations while retaining the ability to make calm and mindful decisions. It's called being cool under pressure, calm under pressure. One of the things that I found is being a law enforcement officer that you would find is often, and many officers worked hard on this, and sometimes if you're watching some show where they're actually playing the audio tape from a police officer dealing with a stressful situation, he's very calm. He says very matter-of-factly what he's doing. But I mean, I have been in situations where I've heard officers tell someone, hey, to dispatch, have someone check by the situation, and they're in the middle of a fight, and they're that calm, right? The reason why, if they're screaming in the mic, no one understands what they're saying. So it's really important, and this is a part of equanimity. Equanimity is the ability to remain in stressful situations, yet be able to respond calmly. The goal of the soul trait of equanimity is to remain in the present moment and not let your emotions get better of yourself. Let me repeat this again. The goal of the soul trait, equanimity, is to remain in the present moment and not let your emotions get better of you. Now, just as we had all the other soul traits, we have the spectrum. You remember the line that we drew? And in the middle is equanimity. On one side is hysterical, right? Just completely out of control, lose your mind, hysterical. And the opposite end is oblivious ambivalence. Oblivious ambivalence. Meaning you're so disconnected, you're not even being practical. Both of those things are just as bad, right? Now, here is a good example. Moms especially often have this character trait when something bad happens in their home. Most moms that I know of keep pretty focused. They don't get too hysterical. It's like, we got to take care of this problem and get, a cut finger or whatever it may be. And the child screaming and jumping up and down. Most moms are good at keeping focus and doing that. I remember one time my wife fell and hurt herself really bad. And she was so calm through the whole thing, I was concerned that she had bumped her head too hard. But she was so calm. And I'm like, and she goes, I said, you're so calm. She goes, no, I think I'm going to pass out, right? But the whole point is there's a spectrum of equanimity. And the goal today is for us to evaluate ourselves and find out, where are we at on the continuum? Are we oblivious and ambivalent to our situation? Or are we hysterical? And most of us sort of wander back and forth, not too far to the right or left, but somewhere, hopefully, God willing, we'll stay in the middle. Here's a quote from Rabbi Simcha Zisel Ziv, the Alter Rebbe of Kelm. He says, a person who has mastered peace of mind has gained everything. A person who's mastered peace of mind has gained everything. Does peace of mind mean that everything's working in your favor? No, not at all. Peace of mind is, in spite of everything, not always working in my favor. I'm still calm. Jewish sources use several terms to name the soul trait of undisturbed equanimity. The most descriptive is a Hebrew phrase. It's called menuchat hanefesh. Menuchat hanefesh, calmness of the soul. Calmness of the soul. The calm soul rides on the inner even keel regardless of what is happening within and around you. I like it to surfing. If you ever watch a surfer, goodness, it looks so dangerous. And the other day I saw a surfer with flares on the back of his board doing this great art in the Philippines, and I'm thinking that's even crazier to go out there and do that. But these guys are riding the crest of waves that could, in a moment, rip them apart, break their ribs, etc., etc. And yet they just glide through with no problems. Why? It's because they've learned to keep themselves balanced at the right point between absolute smoothness and chaos. And this is the secret here. Before we surf off into this peaceful and beguiling sea that we're going to talk about equanimity, I want to bring up one of the first Mussar teachings that has actually piqued my interest this week. It is from Rabbi Israel Salander, the father of Mussar movement, who said this. There's a quote. It says, as long as one lives, now this is an interesting quote, as long as one lives a life of calmness and tranquility in their service of God, get this, it is clear that he is remote from true service. Uh-oh. Now follow me. This is where we're going to know what equanimity is. As long as one lives a life of calmness and tranquility in service to God, it is clear that he's remote from true service. Now let's put this in perspective. It doesn't mean that a person who, while serving Hashem, cannot be calm and have tranquility. What it means, if you're so calm and you're so tranquil, it's probably because in your service to God, you're ambivalent. Yeah, you're not going up. So it's like taking a nap on a ladder. Right? No one would think in a heartbeat to take a nap on the ladder. You would think that's insane. However, climbing the ladder with calmness so that I am relaxed and not overstressed is equanimity. Does that make sense? So it's about the balance of it. Here we're being cautioned that calmness and tranquility are contrary to spiritual service. This settlement is echoed in a more general way by Rabbi Adin Stensaltz, who writes in his 13 principles or 13 attributes of Mussar. The Jewish approach to life considers the man who has stopped going, he who has a feeling of completion, of peace, of a great light from above that has brought him to rest, to be someone who has lost his way. Only he whom the light continues to beckon, for whom the light is distant forever, only he can be considered to have received some sort of response. Now you follow what I'm saying? Let me repeat. It's the person who says, I've arrived. I've arrived. I don't need anything else. I've got everything I need to know. I'm okay. You're okay. I'm okay. You're okay. Well, what the sages of Judaism is saying, that we never should become so satisfied with our condition and our service to Hashem that we don't really need to consider something new that we need to change or focus on or make better. That if we have peace and tranquility in our service to Hashem, we're missing something. Which I never even thought about that. When I read it the first time, I go, whoa, hold on, I got to read this again. Doesn't sound right at all. But now that I step back, I realize it's like a person who's working a job who is neutral in the way he works his job. He gets it done, but nothing else. Doesn't do anything else. Doesn't do the extra work. Doesn't try to come in extra early, and he for sure ain't going to stay late. Nobody can ever complain he's not doing his job, but at the same time, he's not the kind of guy that you're going to promote because he's just ambivalent toward his job. He's complacent. Very good words, very good word. These teachings tell us that the Jewish spiritual journey isn't supposed to lead you to a station called peace and tranquility. Every religion in the world wants to lead you to a place of what? Nirvana, peace and tranquility. Judaism says no, peace and tranquility can be found in spite of all the things that are going on in your life. But the end goal is not peace and tranquility. The end goal is calmness in your spirit. Because the sad thing is, no one is going to receive peace and tranquility in life. And the person that's trying to find that it's going to be elusive. They'll never be able to find it. But religions have, monks have moved out and lived by themselves to make vows of silence and to not speak to anybody. And there are people that make these amazing vows to try to bring themselves to some great level of peace, when in reality they realize everything around them still keeps happening. They still struggle in their mind. They still have depression. They still have anxiety. Every human being is the same. But can I achieve equanimity or calmness in my spirit even when I'm depressed, even when I have anxiety, even when I'm frustrated? Yes, that's the key right there. It is seductive to think of a total escape from the storms and turmoils of life. It does. There's some appeal to it. Remember that commercial? We'd all remember, all of us old people. Calgon, Take Me Away. I think it was a bath salt or something, right? Everyone fantasized about being in a place where there's no problems. I remember talking to a former Houston police officer that retired and moved to Lakey, Texas. I love Lakey. Melanie knows I love Lakey. But when I talked to him, he had been there for 13 years, and he was the county sheriff. He was the big dog. And I said, "What? It must be amazing to work in a little town. Everybody knows everybody. It's a great place. It's like like a small family." He goes, "No." He said, "Let me tell you what, I've been here 13 years and none of them accepted me yet." And I said, "Why? Is it because of something you do?" He goes, "No, it's the fact that I don't have 3 generations that live here. And everybody treats everybody who comes here as an outsider." And he says, "They won't be mean to you. They're not, they're not nasty or mean. They're just not going to do you any favors because you're sort of an outsider." And he said, it's odd being the sheriff, the guy with all the power, and people still think that you're the outsider that's imposing all this stuff on them. So if we think that escaping our environment is going to change anything, it's really not. Now, can we achieve peace and shalom and de-stress? Absolutely. We're not saying that those things are not available. Now, and yet shalom, peace, is one of the highest Jewish values. And menucha, calmness or rest, is an essential thing for Shabbat. So how can we square the positive and the negative sides of equanimity? The negative side being, there's always going to be troubles and difficulties. That to say that I'm calm and tranquil, then it could be a point that I'm not in true service to God because I'm sort of oblivious to my relationship with God. We got to make sure that that's not the case. The fact is that we can have both. Having the soul trait of equanimity doesn't spell the end of our struggles, but it is rather an inner quality that equips us to handle those struggles. That's the difference. Trying situations crop up in everyone's life. It's not accidental. Life is constructed to give our spiritual traits to our soul. If we didn't have difficult times, if we didn't have difficult situations in our relationships, if we didn't have those occasional times in which you have to check yourself and balance things out and how you respond, our inner soul is never going to be improved. Our inner soul is like gold that is in ore. It has to be put under fire before it is purified and made pure. That's what makes them a test, because we need them. If you are a person prone to anger and someone steps in on your toe, literally or figuratively, or you are sorely tempted to steal, or someone leaves an open purse right under your nose, none of you guys are like that, then you have a spiritual test. You got to see if you got to pass a test. If you're the type of person that is open and free to tell people, everybody, how you feel, the test for you is when not to do that, correct? If you're a type of person who always holds back, and it's not humility, it's timidity. You understand being timid? Because there's some people you think, oh, they're really humble. No, not. They're timid. They don't know how to stand up for themselves or stand up for somebody else. There's times that you have to kind of get up and put your hands on your hips and go, no, you're not going to do this to me. So these are about balancing all of our really life together. What's ideal? To rise to the test and to triumph with flying colors. This means stretching into the midah, or the soul trait, in a way that is both difficult for you to achieve and good for the soul. The reality, though, is that you could go either way. That's why the test is real. If you pass the test, then that aspect of your inner being gets strengthened and you earn the right to move on. Otherwise, you're more likely to encounter this same thing over and over. I don't know if you've noticed that in the weeks of working on the Mussar, the traits that we've mentioned, you may run into a trait that's a constant problem for you. And if you do, just know that this is the one that you have to work on. It's not God punishing you. It's not that you're a bad person. It's just a trait you have to start focusing on to strengthen. So life keeps delivering its tests on our doorsteps, whether we happen to be living through days of darkness or when things are going well. We do ourselves a favor by embracing the struggles. My son and many military people have a term. I won't say it, but it's about embracing the difficulties. You understand what I'm saying? If you get it, it could be the worst situation. You just have to embrace it and deal with it. Meaning it could be the most horrible situation, but you cannot run away from it. You have to embrace it. Let's look at a scenario, and then you guys can help me come up with some scenarios. One night, the Moss family came home very late from a wedding. They had the kids. Everybody was exhausted. They get to the front door, and the dad can't find the house key because it attaches to the ring, and it must have fell off. So they went back to the car. They're looking for the key. They can't find the key. Everybody's upset. The baby's crying. The baby's tired. The baby's hungry. Now, what do you think is the best rational steps the family should take? Who should do what? Should they lose their mind? Should the man start screaming and cussing and blaming everybody for losing the key? Does the woman tell him, this is how you always do it, you always lose the key? How about the kid saying, Dad, I wish you were more mindful of us? What should happen? Talk to a neighbor who has a key. Or how about this? If nobody has a key, which most people hopefully would have a key, if you don't have a key, then you can always break a window and get in the house. It's pain. Call a locksmith. But do you realize how many families and how many couples destroy each other's emotions by breaking down and blaming and screaming and fussing? And there's no need to do that, because we all get under stress. Equanimity says we take this very stressful thing and it's not going to change. And doggone, I don't want to pay. How much did we pay that time we get a locksmith to open? We had a bedroom door I could not get open. My grandchild locked it, right? And I'm like, I do not want to spend that kind of money because it's 60. Like, I was thinking maybe, but then I'm thinking that's going to tear the door frame up. I don't want to do that. So finally, it's like we have to do it. It's like there's no reason to get upset. You just have to embrace it. You have to do it. There's a concept that's really important that is taught in equanimity, is the idea of distancing yourself. You understand? Though it's happening to me, I've got to step back as the observer, not as the participant. Why? Because as a participant, we get emotionally attached to a situation. we get our anger is attached to it, our frustrations are attached to it. A number of things are associated. And the best thing to do is detach. Now, I'm going to talk from experience, and that is many law enforcement, nursing, doctors, military get very good. I know men especially get very good at detaching and compartmentalizing. Have you heard that term before? They put it in a little box back here in the back of the head, and they don't think about it. And then one day when they're 50, it pops out and you break down and you start having psychiatric issues and all this other stuff, and you wonder, where did that come from? It's because you can't put stuff in a box and not expect at some point to have to deal with it. That's why I encourage people that's been through a traumatic situation like the kids in the school shooting down in Santa Fe or in Florida. If somebody's in the military or some person involved in a horrible accident like the teens were killed, that boy, even though he was at fault for it, is going to need some therapy, because you can only put that stuff and distance yourself for a while before it's going to affect you. Now, distancing yourself is absolutely an essential tool to managing that situation at that time. But distancing yourself in the future is not a healthy thing. Do you understand? Not talking about it, not communicating about it, not dealing with it properly is not a healthy thing. But at the time, it's good to step back and say, okay, hold on. I need to be very aware of what's going on. I need to stay very focused, but I've got to step back so that I can make good, calm decision. In his letter to his son, the Ramban advises with this: distance yourself from anger. Distance yourself from anger. In his advice also, he says, distance yourself from pride. This phrase, distance yourself, shows up everywhere as well. We're surely not told never to be angry. We're never told to not be proud of a child. We're never told to not feel a tinge of jealousy if you have a spouse that is cheating on you or something. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is when it comes to being able to have equanimity or calmness of the spirit, if you don't learn to step out of it for just a little bit and take a breath, what's going to happen is the emotion of the situation will take over and you will make bad decisions. You will say things that how many times have we said stuff that we regret? I mean, I'm telling you, and when you say it, it's like once it's out, you're not getting it back, right? And it's always better just to take a pause and go, let me think about it for a few days. Somebody responds to you about something on an email or a text, don't answer right away. Take your time, right? Take your time. Everyone experiences the full range of inner states, and in and of themselves, every inner trait is neither good nor bad. Now, I got to say this, it's important. All the inner traits, jealousy, anger, frustration, you name it, they're not good or bad, it's just emotions. That's why you don't need to make those emotions own you. You follow? Someone embarrasses me, humiliates me in public. I'm embarrassed, I'm humiliated, now I want to lash back and say something because I've got a really smart mouth and I probably could. But I cannot let that embarrassment own me, because if it does, I'm going to feel responsible that I have to respond to that. And that's the hardest thing in the world, especially if you're someone like me who's easy at just saying stuff, you know, coming back to make sure I get a gig on somebody. And it's hard not to just come back and say, and a lot of times my wife would go, well, why didn't you say so-and-so? I'm like, at the time, I started to shut down because I'm so scared I'm going to say something wrong at the time. It's hard. Since we all experience these things, then we have to continue to what? Distance ourselves. Then we can only mean two things. Either we are to stay physically far from other people who are angry, proud, etc., or we are being directed to develop some kind of inner distance from the experience of our anger, pride, and other incendiary midot. So here we go. The natural response that most of us have when we say distance ourselves is to get in the car, go home, don't talk to anybody, don't have relationships with anybody, don't go to work, don't deal with kooky people, right? That would be nice. It'd be great. Now, Can I say it's all right to cut people out of your life who are crazy? Okay, so I'm not saying that. It's all right to cut people loose that cause trauma. If you have a child in the home or a family member that's causing a lot of trauma for you, it's all right to go, you know what? No, we ain't doing this no more. I can choose not to do it. But at the same time, that's not the Jewish answer to it. The Jewish answer is within yourself, distance yourself. Just not let it own you. Y'all understand what I mean by not letting it own you? Although there are definitely times when we ought to stand away from powerful outer forces, we should be less concerned about the exterior forces than we are about the impulses inside of ourselves. Do you follow? It's good to say, okay, I'm not going to let this person make me upset and angry by the way they talk. But at the same time, it's more important to say, what is my response to them? See, I can't control anything in the world, but I can control how I respond to those things in the world. Yes, Toby? You having what now?
An interesting explanation for this.
Okay.
Like, you have this puppy dog who got put in the pen for making a mess on the floor or eating something it wasn't supposed to. It's in the pen and it's just crying and crying and crying. And if you yell at it or cover its pen, it's getting attention and it does it more.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a training thing with dogs.
You need to blanket your own
Right.
emotions so that you don't yell at it and don't encourage it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that have you ever seen the dog whisperer, Caesar whatever Milan? He'll tell you in training a dog, you have to stay calm to communicate anything. This is the same thing that what Torah is really talking about, because animals, they don't look at anything other than response. They are looking, so if you're not calm and you're telling them to do things, it confuses them, it confuses their response. And I wonder if it's not the same thing with human beings, that when you stay calm and focused, when was it? The other day the FBI came to the house to interview about somebody that we know that's getting ready to go to work for the FBI. And we know this young woman since she was 12, and she's now 23, 4, almost 30. Oh, geez, I'm getting old. She's going to work for the FBI, and I told my wife when he left, I said, doggone it made me feel so good to talk about the character traits of this woman. Like, I have never in my entire life known her to ever show anger, frustration, irritability, lashing out. Never, ever. And it's not because she hadn't had those opportunities in her life. She's just never done it. She's always been the most calming person. She's a volunteer. She's a team player. And I'm thinking, wow, what a perfect person to bring on your team. And I told him, I said, I know you must think I'm building this up bigger than it is, but I'm not. I mean, my wife's sitting right here, she'll tell you the same thing. We're not. She is every bit that type of person. And I look at someone like that and I go, that's how I want to be. I hope other people would say the same about us. Now, so we are solely responsible for what goes on inside of us. I'm not responsible for how people respond to me, right? What if somebody tells you I'm mad at you and upset at you? Now, you can apologize. But if they continue to be angry and upset and to trash you, do whatever, are you responsible for their actions? No, not at all. You're not responsible for their actions. If you didn't cause it, of course. If you caused it, then you can go, look, I'm really sorry. But if they continue on acting like a mental person, you're not responsible. You've apologized, you've done what you could, and maybe you should apologize 10 or 11 times. Give them a gift, I don't know. But if it doesn't work, then back off. You are responsible for your own actions. In order to create some distance between the stimulus, that is the exterior force, what comes at us, and our reactions to it, we need to cultivate a strong inner witness. Now, what are we talking about? This perspective helps you from being infected by those outer influences that swirl around you. The same inner faculty also keeps you from being pushed around by the forces that rise within you. The distance witnessed is not susceptible to the tides of doubt. Now, when we talk about distance witnessed, once you begin to practice this and you begin to step back in distance, for example, somebody at work, somebody says something that just absolutely just annoys you, and you distance yourself and you respond, all of a sudden it's going to become a witness that this actually works. There's an inner light that can direct you. This is what it is to take the focus off of the situation and put the focus on the character trait that you want. Does that make sense? So as soon as it happens, don't focus on this person was rude, this happened bad. Put it on the character trait that says, okay, I need to have inner calmness. Let me focus on that. Now my response is going to be based on what I'm wanting to achieve, right? So this is not, I've even heard described, focus on a light, an inner light. That kind of sounds like meditation and something else. I'm a little uncomfortable with it. But what I'm saying is just redirect your mind. Get it off of that situation. Put it on yourself and your inner self. Cultivating the inner witness means being sensitive and aware of what is taking place inside of you without being identified with the feelings themselves. So you can still have the feelings, right? You still have the feelings, but you don't let that control who you are. You remain separated from them. Let's say, for example, that you find yourself waiting in line while a person in front of you fumbles through their purse, apparently crammed with every conceivable thing. I'm saying this because I've had this, except that the needed credit card that they're looking for. And you start feeling impatient. That is quickly becoming anger. This happened to me the other day on 1960. I'm driving, the guy's slow, 35, 40. I'm like, oh man, I'm about to pass him up. So I go to turn over, and he turns over in the lane in front of me. Now, Melanie goes, I know you're thinking it. And I was thinking it, but I didn't say it, right? So the whole point is at that moment you recall the need of the inner witness and call yourself to pay attention to the sensations. That's how I'm trying to overcome it, is by recognizing I most definitely want to say something. Am I thinking it? There's nothing good or bad with what I'm thinking. It's just the fact that I need to not respond and frustrate my wife and ever who else is in the car, because it sure ain't going to change that guy's mind. Toby.
No, I have two things.
Okay.
One is, it's like there's stuff going around you, and you need to focus not on that, but like when you're trying to learn to cross your eyes, you're often told to try and look at your nose or focus on one finger, or something like that. It's basically what you want to do is focus on that.
You want to focus on the inner self, right?
Part of you.
Right.
That will make you better. Not what you're trying to
Right.
do.
That is. So as that is said, I want to remind us, the situation that happens to you, distancing yourself says, that's not me. What I mean by that's not me is I'm angry and upset because of what's happening. I'm impatient and I'm frustrated. Why can't these people be considerate? But that's not me. What's me is the inner calmness that I want to be. You're following me? Okay. Do we still face struggles? Yes. Do we still have do the consequence matter? Yes. Do we still feel free from a full range of human emotion and drives? Yes. In other words, every aspect of our life is real and important. We would be wise to embrace it because it is our curriculum. Our life is our curriculum. But at the same time, cultivate the witness. Cultivate the very fact that inside of me is the real person. The real person is my soul. The real person is a divine spark. And that divine spark needs to have a resting place of equanimity, calmness of the soul. That concludes this shiur. We're finished, and we can go into comments, questions, fears, doubts, or unbeliefs.